SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. And we're on. We have to cut out all that whole thing because our last podcast for the second week in a row got flagged for election interference.
Okay.
But it was actually because Donald Trump was in the thumbnail. So we changed the thumbnail.
Alright, so it wasn't what we were saying, it was the thumbnail.
Yeah. So the thumbnail had Donald Trump because we discussed Donald Trump last time.
Because I suspected that might have been the case, and that's why I don't have any Donald Trump related items on. We're having a break from Trump today.
Yeah, definitely. Election interference. The one thing that and it's American. The flag is US election interference.
Yeah. I never thought we had that much influence.
I'm so happy though. Meanwhile, speaking of the US,
yes.
NRL in Vegas was a resounding success. 22%. Let me just confirm those percentages. 26%. Anyway, a certain amount of percentage of SmartB users actually tip the Raiders, but not very many.
Yeah, well, we didn't, did we?
No.
I don't think either of us did.
No, not at all. There we go.
Mitchell Pearce did though, didn't he?
No, he didn't. No, did he?
Oh, I thought he did. I thought he got...
Oh, yeah, he did actually. Yeah. He did, yeah. So it's 22% of people tip the Raiders, so 22% of people are happy with the outcome. 78% of people tip realistically, and Ricky Stuart overcome it. He's still got a lot to complain about.
Yes.
Which we'll get to after. What do you think of the game?
The Raiders Warriors game, I thought, well done to the Raiders. I'll put that out there. We've got to give credit where credit's due. We have had a lot to say about them, but well done to them. They got the result in round one. I thought they were pretty good, but I thought the Warriors were ordinary. And there's a bit of chatter about, and I know it's only round one, but there's a bit of chatter about, Andrew Webster. Maybe he's under a little bit of pressure, even though it's very early on. So I thought that game was a bit flat. The Panthers-Sharks game, I think, was clearly the best game of the four. That was easily the best game on display. I didn't watch all of the other two games because... Yeah, I just thought 4 games was, and we will talk about it a bit later, but I thought 4 games was far too many, far too long. And the problem with having such a long day is by the time you get to the main event, which was the Panthers and Sharks, well, everybody's a little bit fatigued, and if you're trying to appeal to a new audience, you don't want them fatigued going into that last game.
Well, yeah, I ended up subscribing to KO for $1, pretending I've never subscribed to KO before, using different email address, different credit card, and all that kind of stuff. Just because I couldn't find a good, perfectly legal stream for it, and I was at home. See, I'm more used to the UFC. I'm one of the UFC people that. It's rare. It's a rarity. But I wake up and watch the early prelims, the prelims, and the main card. Right. The UFC is an 8-hour day, 8 or 9 hour day.
Yeah.
Most combat sports cards are an 8 or 9 hour day. Like when I go to Subversion Jiu-Jitsu, doors open at 4:30. I'm usually there at 3:30. Going to the rules meeting because we're previous sponsors of it. And then I'm there for the first matches when everyone is trickling in all the way through to the 6-hour event. So I didn't mind the 8 hours. But I can understand why the majority of people won't. Like I said, I'm the exception. Like when I have UFC, when I do a gathering for UFC, like this weekend, I'm going to watch the UFC with the guys guys and girls. Sorry, Alison, from the gym. They've organised the meeting for. I think the main card starts at 2 p.m. So we're meeting at 2 p.m. Whereas I will, on the way, not that I would ever watch UFC in my car. On the way, have the early prelims on and listening to the commentary, which will take me about half an hour to get there, so I'll probably miss 1 or 1.5 fights. and then arrive at the venue for the prelims. And I'll sit there by myself and watch the prelims.
So you're used to watching it for that long.
And look, it's hard to watch something like, I think the fatigue sets in more because of the wide variety of games that were on. Like, there was a massive amount of people watching that Wigan and Warrington?
Yeah, it was them, yeah.
But see, I can't even remember the teams. And so there'll be a lot of Australian people who are like, ugh. And then they tried to slot that Jillaroos versus England game in, but it just wasn't a contest.
No.
It was so pointless. And so it's hard if you have 4 really exciting games. Like the like how many people sit and watch Super Saturday with the 3 games, or go to the Magic rounds and stuff like that, and will watch 4 days of football. They always get sellout crowds. But it's because the games are exciting. Whereas with even the Wigan Warrington game was a blowout, and it had some awesome tries, but it wasn't competitive. So I think if they want to run 4 games, they need 4 exciting games.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, to be honest, I knew going into it, I just knew, look, I'm not going to be able to sit through 4 games. So I watched maybe 5 or 10 minutes of Wigan and Warrington, just wanted to, get a feel for it. But that was all I watched. And then I watched the 2 NRL games. I didn't watch the Jillaroos game. But yeah, I just knew going into it, look, there's no way I'm going to be able to sit through 4 games of football. I'm going to pick my games here, and I thought, well, I wanted to watch a bit of the Super League game because it was the first game, and just to get a feel for it, but I was never going to watch more than about 10 minutes of it, to be honest. And then I thought, I'll watch the 2 NRL games and skip the Jillaroos game. But at least when you're watching on TV, you have that option of picking and choosing. The problem was for the fans at the game, there were no pass outs, so if you're a fan who wanted to go watch Wigan and Warrington the first game, and you wanted to watch Penrith and Cronulla the last game, well, you had to sit through 4 full games of football. There were no pass outs. You couldn't go out and come back into the stadium. So
that's because people would scam it.
Yeah, but I think they are looking at. I think it was a bit ambitious to go from 2 games the first year to 4 games the second year. I think they're looking at bringing it back to 3 games for next year. But we will get into that in a bit more detail in a little bit.
For the Raiders and Warriors, Raiders for the wooden spoon anyway. Even though they beat the Warriors, I think the Warriors just played really, really badly. They weren't. In my 8 last week, I had them missing the 8. In my ladder last week, I had them missing out the 8 because of the travel. Warriors don't travel well to Australia. They're not going to travel well to America.
The US,
and the Raiders didn't look like they put a clinic on against the Warriors. But if someone plays as poorly as the Warriors did, it's not hard to look good. Even the Tigers look really good. Like if the Tigers smashed someone 30, what was it, 20...
The Raiders Warriors score was 30-8.
38, right? If the other team played so well, even the Tigers would have looked good last year, So I don't think there was too much to write home. I'm sure Raiders fans are all running out and buying grand final tickets now. And as you said, Warriors fans are now calling for the sacking of Andrew Webster. But I didn't expect... It's opening round, man. Like, what can you really say?
But this is the thing, and Ricky Stuart's taken a swipe at those who've tipped the Raiders to come last. Yeah. Look, I'll put my hand up. I tipped them to come last week.
Too. A bunch of people did.
Yeah, James Graham tipped them to come last. Michael Maguire tipped them to come last. And Ricky took a swipe at journos in the press conference. He said, and I quote, "It's going to be a tough competition, mate, if we're going to run last." He then said, "You guys all do write us off, which I don't mind. It's easy for me." Well, I don't think he doesn't mind because he points it out in the press conference. So clearly it does get to him. If it didn't get to him, he wouldn't point it out in the press conference. We just gave them credit. They had a good win in the first round. But look, it is still possible to come last after you win in round 1. It is still possible to have a poor season overall after you win in round 1. It is only round 1. And look, they haven't had a good run in recent seasons. Last year, they didn't make the top 8. The year before in 2023, they scraped in. They finished 8th and got knocked out in week 1 of the finals. 2022, look, they finished 8th. They did reach week 2 of the finals, but got thumped 40-4 by Parramatta. And in 2021, they finished 10th and missed the 8. So they're either missing the 8 or they're just scraping in and doing nothing once they get there. And that's happened for the last 4 years in a row. He's still now into his 12th season at the Raiders. He has not won a premiership yet at the Raiders as coach. And as I said a number of times, his only premiership win as coach came in 2002. That's 23 years ago now. There would be some players in the NRL now who were born after Ricky Stuart's last premiership win, who are now playing in the NRL.
Yeah.
Anyone in the NRL who's under 23 years of age were born after Ricky Stuart's last premiership win. That's how long ago it was.
And there'd be a bunch of juniors playing and getting scouted by teams right now who are 12 years old. That, what's it called? Weren't born when Ricky Stuart, since Ricky Stuart won a grand final at the Canberra, which he never has.
So he's come out and had a go at journos for saying they're going to run last. Well, what happens now if they do run last? You can still run last after you win your round 1 game. It's still possible.
Yeah.
So if they actually do finish last, he's going to look pretty silly at the end of the season now. And he's not setting a real high bar for his team, is he? Saying it's going to be a tough competition, mate, if we're going to run last. And then you go, oh, okay, so if you come second last, would you be happy with that, Ricky?
Yeah.
So he'd be satisfied with coming second last then, would he?
Just wrong.
Just because a few journos have said they're going to come last, does that mean he's now going to be happy with coming second last? Does that mean all his mates in the media at the end of the season, if they come second last, are they going to go, oh, but some journos were tipping him to come last this year?
Yes. Even when he wins, he's got something to complain about.
I thought when they won, I thought, oh, okay, well, we're not going to be able to talk about the Raiders today because they had a win. But then he's taken a swipe at reporters after a win, so I thought, well, yeah, okay, we can talk about him again today.
Well, he'll always give us something to talk about because that's the way he rolls. Always complaining, never satisfied.
Yeah, and I noticed, I think it was James Graham who said they were going to come last. And then there's a line from this report. It says, Graham did qualify his comments by saying that Stuart's coaching was the number one reason why Canberra might avoid the spoon. Why does he feel the need to qualify it? Look, it's okay, James. You can say that they're going to come last. You don't have to qualify it by saying, oh, but because of Ricky's coaching, that they might not come last. Like, it's okay. You can say that you think they're going to come last. You've earned the right to say that, James Graham.
Because then he won't get the... Ricky Stuart will get on the phone to his bosses and, they're all best friends and probably best mates at their weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%.
On that, actually I watched some snippets from the Let's Trot podcast. Paul Kent's currently doing the rounds.
Is that his new podcast, Kenty, or is it that Steve Gillis?
No, he was on another podcast. It's on Let's Trot, which is I can't remember who.
Is that Josh Adokar's podcast?
It might be
Josh Mansour.
Josh Mansour, yeah.
Because I think it might be Josh Mansour's podcast, but I think Josh Adokar goes on it a lot. Yeah, so Paul Kent went on that as well, did he?
And he was talking about how most journalists are actually really afraid to say anything negative about any sports because the sports have such a large control over the media and can ban you from the rooms and stuff like that.
Yeah, they can take your access away.
Yeah, like what's her face did the Trump administration did to the Associated Press. So that's the thing. Yeah. Paul Kent talks about it. Like, as much as everyone wants to hate on Paul Kent, he was justifying his negativity. Actually, he's asked people always say you're negative, and he said, yeah, but they should actually realise that most journalists aren't negative because they're afraid of losing access.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's 100% right. Yeah, I didn't know that I know he went on that on Steve Gillis's podcast, and I know he went on, or he's just started his own podcast. That podcast called Kenty. but I didn't know that he went on the Let's Trot podcast.
Yeah, I just saw a clip this morning.
Yeah, right. Okay, so the comeback started for Kenty. He's doing the podcast rounds. He's had his time out.
Yeah.
I think this is the start of the comeback. I think it'll get momentum. I think eventually he will come back into the mainstream media.
God, my computer's going crazy right now.
Oh,
I should have restarted it before we started. But then the other news out of the Raiders-Warriors game was the Warriors assistant coach is a grumpy man. Used to be a Super League coach. Had a negative article written about him once.
Yeah.
And then while walking past the press box, allegedly grabbed a reporter by the throat.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, he should be sacked.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, he should be. This is criminal charges. He's this is assault. He's grabbed him by the throat. So the journalist was English journalist John Davidson from the Guardian. And the background of this apparently is that Leeds were struggling, and the journalist wrote a column urging the club to sack Agar. So it's Richard Agar is this Warriors assistant coach, and that journalist John Davidson wrote a column in 2022 urging the club to sack Agar. So that's what it all goes back to, this article written 3 years ago one time about how they should have sacked him, and he's held that grudge for 3 years, and he's grabbed him by the throat. So that's just disgraceful from Richard Agar. And they're saying, it's allegations. All right, but Phil Rothfield actually says that he witnessed the incident occur. He said he saw it. So that's the thing. I'm not the biggest fan of Buzz Rothfield, but he's not going to make that up. Like, if he says that he saw it, well, he saw it. And, obviously it happened. He's not just going to make that up out of nowhere. So that's just not on physical assault on a journalist just because you don't like the article. They wrote, not only should he be sacked, this is now a criminal matter as far as I'm concerned. This is assault.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely crazy. The press is... It's a bit of an extreme about what we were just talking about with Kenty. It's the next step. It's the opposite. Like, you're not allowed to say negative things about clubs because now the clubs will bash you. The coaches will bash you. Is that the direction we're going? Like,
that's just hopeless. Yeah,
and it's like. But I've seen some comments from people on the internet that support. What team did he play for? Wigan. Yeah, Wigan. I mean, coached Wigan. That everyone was calling.
Sorry, Leeds.
Leeds. Yeah, everyone was calling for his sacking at the time. So he's gone and targeted this one. Does that mean every time he sees any English journalist that there's calling for his sacking, he's going to go and try and bash them?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, if you're going to be the head coach or any coach of a professional sporting organisation and you're not getting results, there are going to be reporters who call for you to be sacked from time to time, and that comes with the territory. That's just part of the gig. If you don't like that, then don't get into professional sports coaching. I'll give you the tip because it's going to happen.
Yes.
You're well paid, and the downside of being well paid is that you're highly accountable.
Well, we went through it before. Every coach has been sacked except Craig Bellamy.
Yeah. It's part of the gig of being a professional sports coach is it's highly likely that at some stage you are going to get sacked, and that means you are going to have reporters who call for you to be sacked from time to time. And those reporters are paid, let me tell you, those reporters are paid a lot less money than the coaches themselves, okay? So the coaches can wear the odd opinion piece saying that they should be sacked. That's just the journalist doing their job for, let me tell you, a lot less money than what the coach.
Now everyone's calling for him to be sacked, so has he got another list of people that he has to go and approach and grab by the throat next time he finally gets a job? Because everyone's calling him for him to be sacked for assaulting a reporter.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and he does it at half time during the game. So he's an assistant coach at the Warriors. They didn't play.
Getting pumped.
They were getting pumped. So his job is to go down into the rooms and get in the ear of the players and try to sort out what's going on the field. But he's too busy grabbing journalists by the throat to be actually talking to his players at that time. Not that it matters what time he does it, but, it sort of makes it even worse that he did it at half-time during the game when he's supposed to be talking to his players at that time.
Just a bizarre thought process. But yeah, now he's called to be sacked, and the NRL will probably have to either suspend or demand that he be sacked. Because you gotta if you assault a journalist, all of the journalists, even if they hate each other, will band together against you.
And this is the thing. So that's what's going to happen now. He's going to have a target on his back from journalists now. This is that serious. He may not get another gig.
All of the journalists can now use their medium.
That's right. Journalists are not going to have any sympathy for him. Yeah. And you know what? He's got it coming to him by doing this. I'm sorry. If you're going to grab a journalist by the throat and other journalists team up on you after that, well, what do they say? You make your bed, you lay in it.
Yes. And there's apparently some CCTV, so...
And look, as you say, Phil Rothfield has been around for so long. He's the chief sports reporter for the Daily Telegraph, or the sports editor. There's no way that he said that he saw it happen. There's no way that he's making that up. He just wouldn't do that.
Yeah, more. Cause
why would he do that? What reason would he have for doing that? He just wouldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And the other issue that come out of it.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary that the one time of the year Rugby League's in Las Vegas, these stories that are coming out. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Crazy.
That a coach could grab a journalist by the throat, and then this story now.
Yeah, so the NFL player who blew the horn because Dana White turned down the request.
That just adds to it as well.
Was taking a pee, and then something happened, and he got tased and kicked out of the Allegiant Stadium.
Yeah, he was reportedly evicted from Allegiant Stadium for alleged misbehaviour. According to the SMH, Las Vegas Raiders defensive tackle Tyler Manoa, his name is, was removed from the stadium following a bathroom incident in one of the corporate areas. Manoa is said to have damaged property and was in turn booted from the venue he plays home games at. This just gets better and better, this story, doesn't it?
There's no media about it in America, though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised there's not. I mean, it's still he is an NFL player, though.
Yeah, America doesn't really.
But then again, given some of and there's been stories about NFL players over the years, being charged with murder and this sort of stuff.
Aaron Hernandez.
So this story is just a nothing story compared to that.
I heard this many years ago. I don't know how much truth there is to it, even in today's day and age and stuff. But an American guy told me one of the things he really found different about Australian and American media was the sports report was all to do with players' behaviour in Australia. In America, they have the same kind of player behaviour issues, but there's so much sport and it's on 7 days a week that the sports report doesn't report on that stuff. It has to report on the scores. So they don't have time to report on all the player misbehaviour.
So that just wouldn't rate a mention in America.
It's too minimal. It probably happens he was fully saying, dude, there's way more athletes in America, so you got to think there's way more occurrences. So it has to be something like murder to appear
to get in the news. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, another report from Code Sports claimed he was reportedly tasered by security before being removed from the stadium. This player, apparently, he was absent from the Raiders sheds following their win as well
because he'd been kicked out.
Yeah. And this is nice from the NRL, just trying to avoid taking any action. A line from this report says the NRL has been made aware of the incident, but as it doesn't involve them, they are not investigating it. Talk about washing your hands of it. It happened at their game.
But what are they going to do? He's banned from all future Raiders games. That guy's never going to a rugby league game again. Anyway, unless they pay him again to blow a horn. So what are they going to do? They have no recourse actually. He'll just have to, if he ever comes to Australia and tries to watch an NRL game, he'll be banned from going to the locker room.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess the NRL do have enough off-field stuff to deal with themselves, let alone getting involved in dealing with NFL players as well.
Exactly.
But I think we can be safe to say he won't be invited back next year. I think we can say that that'll be the only course of action they can really take. I guess.
Dragons and the Dogs going next year, so I want to go.
So is that actually?
No, they haven't confirmed it, but that's the leak. You know, NRL. The NRL stuff is like a leaky sieve, so it's like Dragons, Bulldogs, Titans, and Knights or something like that.
Okay, so it does look as though it's going to be 4 different teams each year, and everybody's going to get a go.
Yeah, absolutely. Panthers and Sharks was a fun game though. Sharks looked pretty good in patches.
Yeah.
But as soon as anything negative happened, Nicho Hynes went missing. You know, I was discussing this with some of the boys over like yesterday, the day before. Like, I think the Sharks, they really spelled out their game plan. You know, Nicho Hynes before the season said his strength is his running game, so he's going to try and run more. And then they overly relied on Trindle to do all the kicking. So if Nicho Hynes had the ball on the 5th, they were going to run it. If Braden Trindle had the ball on the 5th, they were going to kick it. And it gave too much predictability in the attack. So although they did score some good tries, and they scored 22 points against Penrith, which is above the Penrith average, you know, so defensive average. But it was a pretty good game, you know.
Clearly the best game of the 4. Yeah. This was a game between 2 teams who finished in the top 4 last season, so it was clearly the marquee game, but by a mile, really, to be honest. The other 3 were nowhere near it in standard. Look, Andrew Johns has criticised Nicho Hynes' defence in this game. He pinpointed a really poor moment in defence that allowed the Panthers to seal that 28-22 victory with a crucial late try. Hynes allowed Garner way too much space, and he put Laurie into the corner with ease. And Andrew Johns said that was really passive, poor defence from Cronulla. Nicho was in the centres. What's he doing there? That was too easy. So Andrew Johns taking aim at Nicho Hynes, and look again. This was a big stage. This game in Las Vegas, and again, Nicho Hynes has not aimed up in a big game on the big stage. He's played 2 Origin games. New South Wales lost both of them. He didn't play well in both the games. Since he's been at Cronulla, they just haven't fired in the big games. In 2022, they finished 2nd, but went out in straight sets in the finals. 2023, they finished 6th, knocked out in week 1 of the finals. 2024, they finished 4th, but lost 2 finals games. They had 1 win, but lost 2 finals games. So this is yet another big game stage in Las Vegas, and Nicho Hynes has had a shocker again.
Yeah, he goes missing kind of even in the derbies and stuff like that, you know, in like crucial games that have high pressure, like, you know, it might be like something like, we're heading into the bye and having a win is we really want to have a win before we head into the bye to set us up for the following week, and then they'll lose. Like, any pressure is heaped as like, you know, we need this win. It's a big stage. He does kind of go missing. And, you know, first 10 minutes, it was all Nicho Hynes, and then something bad happened, and it was no Nicho Hynes. There has been a lot of criticism about Ashley Klein was the referee, right? Yeah. About the refereeing. Like, there was a clear knock-on where, Panthers player threw the ball forwards and it hit the ground, and then the Panthers were allowed to regather it.
And there was an incident where Penrith were going for a try as well, and I thought it was clearly raked out by Cronulla in a try-scoring position, and then Nathan Cleary plants the ball down in the in-goal. That should have been a try. That wasn't a knock-on by the Penrith player. That was raked out by Cronulla in a try-scoring situation. Yeah. They're allowed to do that, but it's play on, and then Nathan Cleary scored the try.
There's been a lot of criticism about I'm pretty sure it was Ashley Klein, right?
I'm just double-checking that now.
A lot of criticism about the refereeing. Of course, people are saying he was well-weighted towards the Panthers, but there was many calls during the match that went the way of the Sharks. It shouldn't have as well. And, you know, we discussed it last year. Like, I don't know why people think Ashley Klein is the best ref, or the NRL thinks Ashley Klein is the best ref in the game. I think he's well below what we want.
Yeah, and you're right. He was the referee in that game, Ashley Klein. I find he's very reliant on the technology, and I know they all are, but I find that he's particularly reliant on the technology. and I find the games are very slow with him in charge. Yeah. I don't like to focus too much on the referees because they cop so much heat, and the coaches bag them to deflect from their own poor performance. And I sort of get, I sort of roll my eyes a bit at criticism of refs. But you're right. I mean, games where he's officiating, they're a bit slower. He doesn't let the game flow.
That's the thing with it. Like, I'm a referee for jiu-jitsu, so I know there's a big difference because I don't have to run up and down a field for 80 minutes. I'm not policing 34 players or whatever. But, the compliments I get and the tips I get from like high-level referees in jiu-jitsu is the whole purpose of being a referee is like to not be involved.
Yeah, you've had a good game if no one notices you if you're the ref. Your job is to not be noticed.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like Ashley Klein is too noticeable, too many mistakes. And I know for the next 6 months we're going to be talking about the bunker making mistakes and the referees making mistakes, but it's one of those things like it wouldn't be an issue with all the technology if they got it right, and they don't get it right. So the Penrith and Sharks game was a good game that was marred by terrible officiating from the referees, basically. It was still a good game. Nicho Hynes needs... I think Nicho Hynes needs a sports psychologist also.
Well, I felt... I don't know if you felt the same way, but I felt watching it that... I felt like that scoreline did flutter Cronulla a bit. I thought Penrith had... I feel like if just watching it, I had the feeling that if Penrith wanted to win that by 18 or 20 points, that they could have. I feel like they just sort of did enough to win. Well, I feel like they weren't quite at their best. I feel like the scoreline did flutter the Sharks a little bit. I kind of
thought the Sharks scored their tries. The Panthers didn't let them in, if you know what I mean. Like, the Sharks actually did the effort to get... But the Panthers did as well.
Yeah.
And... The Panthers, the openings that the Sharks made were much worse than the openings that the Panthers left. So the Panthers were the better team. You can complain all you want about the referee giving the Panthers the game all you want that people are complaining about online. But the simple thing is, small lapses in judgment let the Sharks through, and the Sharks were able to capitalise. On the other end of the spectrum, large lapses in judgment let the Panthers through, and Panthers were able to capitalise even better.
And that's what I don't get about people complaining about, the referee cost Cronulla the game. They're not factoring in that try that was disallowed for Penrith that should have been a try. The one where he reached out, had the ball knocked out, and then Cleary grounds it. Well, that should have been a Penrith try as well. So if you're going to say that Cronulla were robbed of the result, well, you've got to be thinking about that try that Penrith were robbed of as well. And what I would say about Nicho Hynes as well is, like, what's Cronulla's overall plan here? Are they just happy just sort of doing well in the regular season? And I know it's only round one, but what indications are there that Cronulla are going to really challenge Penrith or Melbourne this year? I can't see any indication of that yet again. Are they just going to be happy being a good regular season team and then just go get knocked out in straight sets in the finals every year? Because they're not doing anything differently. They're not really addressing these concerns, so there's every reason to think the same thing's going to happen this year.
Will Kennedy had a cracker of a game. He was one of the best on field. Trindle had a cracker of a game. He was one of the best on field. But their general, Nicho Hynes, is just not taking him to that next level when he needs to. And that's just going to be the issue. They can't get to that next level. And it doesn't matter, like I said before, it doesn't matter if it's a local derby or we want to get a good win leading into the bye. Whatever pressure is there that they need to go to that next level, they're just not getting there. And it's like, they get to level 5 and level 5 coasts them through the season. Yeah. They don't even get to level 6, let alone the level 10 they need for the finals, So,
but it's like they're not willing to make those tough decisions they need to make to take that next step. Yeah. They're not willing to do that. And so then you just think, well, all right, the same thing will happen this year. They'll go well in the regular season, and then when it comes to the crunch in the big finals games at the end of the season, they'll have no success.
Exactly. And then prior to the game, there was a lot of chatter around Blaize Talagi not being picked. Yes. Gus Gould had a big tantrum about it because, his team, the Panthers, that he led he's still premierships.
Yeah, he's still running the Panthers, apparently.
They've made the wrong decision and haven't listened to Gus. But Ivan Cleary's finally clarified it. Because Blaize Talagi was the off-season signing that was meant to replace Jarome Luai. Right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then didn't play.
No.
And Ivan Cleary basically said, I find like his comment was a little bit of a stab at Blaize Talagi's previous club, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's one way of looking at it. So the quotes from Ivan Cleary are, he says, Blaize's time will come. He's only a young man. He's got to work out our system a little bit, and he's just coming off a shoulder reco. His time will come. So those are the high standards that Penrith set. That's why they've won the last 4 straight premierships, because they don't just, it's not just as simple as going, we
sign you and you're in.
We sign you and you're in. It doesn't work like that at Penrith. You got to earn your stripes. You got to earn your spot.
So it sounds like he's, I'm reading into it a bit just to create controversy, but it sounds like he's saying basically the Parramatta Eels standards are not up to scratch, and Blaize Talagi's come over with a poor set of standards and hasn't been able to achieve the standards at Penrith in an entire off-season.
Yeah,
and so we'll have to keep working.
Yeah, so Blaize Talagi's come from a club that hasn't won a premiership since 1986, and he's gone into a club that's won 4 premierships in a row. Yeah. There's a bit of a contrast in standards and culture of those two clubs, and it seems like Blaize Talagi just hasn't made the transition. And when you think about it like that, it's sort of not really that surprising, really. You can sort of understand where Penrith are coming from, and it sounds like he's got a bit of work to do if he wants to get that 5'8" spot.
They have players that can cover those spots, early in the season especially. They have players that can cover Nathan Cleary when he only plays 11 games for the season.
Yeah, well...
like, they have the play. So they don't need to take the risks of putting someone in who isn't up to standard.
But isn't that incredible that a player of the calibre of Jarome Luai could leave, and yet they still have another option at 5'8" other than Blaize Talagi and Jack Cole, who played at 5'8" in the game against the Sharks.
And everyone said that with Fisher Harris leaving, they wouldn't have a good forward pack. He was the heart of the forward pack. Well, they outmuscled the Sharks.
And this is the thing, and I know it's only... Look, it is only round 1, but we've only got 2 round 1 games to talk about because that's all we've seen so far.
Exactly.
So my takeaway from that Penrith Cronulla game is you possibly, very possibly, got 2 teams who, well, we know they finished in the top 4 last year. They could very well finish in the top 4 this year, and I felt like my big takeaway from that was Penrith could have won by more if they really wanted to. They weren't really quite at their best. They could have won by more, and that's after losing players like, as you said, like Luai and Fisher Harris. They've lost those 2 players, and yet you're still walking away from a game against another top 4 side from last year thinking, oh, they could have done better.
Yeah.
And so you're already thinking, well...
And they've got Blaize Talagi to come in, who is more talented than Cole.
And yet Brent Reid was adamant that, there's no way they should be favourites this year. Hello? Yeah. I don't really... I mean, as we said last week, I think Melbourne will beat them in the grand final this year, but I'll tell you what, they're absolutely a chance of winning it again, and I don't know what Brent Reid was talking about. I saw a great quote,
if Penrith win the premiership again, we should just cancel the NRL. It's getting boring, Penrith.
It's getting that way. I mean, I really hope they don't win it again. I want to see someone else win it this year.
And prior to the games, they had the great fan events with the players all on the stage dancing, and the Jillaroos danced, and the Sharks danced, and the injured Brian To'o danced and did backflips.
Yeah. He did. I watched the video. He did breakdancing and everything.
Yeah. There's a big outcry about it, but I don't really care, to be honest. There's all the fans are really angry about it. Like, why didn't he play? Well, they won. Who cares?
They did win.
Before it, I was like, well, that's a bit weird. What's it done to the odds and stuff like that? But then they won, so it's just the Panthers. They don't need to have their best. They can. He's probably 1 millimeter away from being healed. And they were like, it's only round 1, we don't need to risk it. And then he shouldn't have done his backflips and stuff like that. But in the end, after they won, I was like, well, justified. Doesn't matter.
I guess the only issue is you wouldn't have wanted him to, in one of those backflips, to do more damage to the injury and be out for longer.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, like, yeah, before the game I agreed with all the outcry, and then after they won I was like, well, you know, does it really matter? Like, I'm just so over Penrith. It's like, man, they can do whatever they want because it doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter who they lose. Doesn't matter what injuries they have. Doesn't matter if Brian tears his hamstring even further. They're going to bloody dominate everyone anyway. Yeah. That's what we should all be outraged about.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, I guess if you ever are going to do backflips and breakdancing while you have an injury, the time to do it is after you won 4 straight premierships.
He shouldn't have been dancing though. He really shouldn't.
Look, Ivan Cleary said, to be honest, he was honest. He said, look, to be honest, it freaked me out a bit. And I'm sure he had a word to him and just said, look, you're a bit out of line there, mate. But that's where it should be left.
I think the worst thing was the worst thing about it was that continued Penrith attitude that puts everyone offside, where he even, like, after he did his backflip and his breakdancing, he, like, walked away clutching his hamstring and, like, pretended to be even more injured. And that's like, dude, like, why you do that?
It's like Novak Djokovic,
yeah, like, you just, why be a dick for? Like, honestly, you don't need to do that. Because that's that attitude that everyone hates about Penrith. Like, you know, the Jerome Luai after losing Origin, you know, oh, you suckers got to work tomorrow, or whatever the social media post was. Yeah. Brian Tuttle doing backflips and stuff when he's been ruled out with injury, and then going to, my hamstring, ha 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 ha, I'm so funny. And it's like, you know, it's like he knew what he had done was going to cause outrage, so then he mocked the people that would be outraged. And so that attitude really puts everyone offside with all the Penrith Panthers, you know.
Yeah, well, there is a touch of arrogance in it. There is a touch of, look, I'm out of the game with an injury, but I'm still going to breakdance if I want to, you know. What are you going to do?
Yeah, we'll still win.
We'll still win.
God damn, I hate it.
And everything, that's the thing, everything seems to go their way. Like, he could have easily done more damage to that and been out for longer, but no, I'm sure he'll be back soon and it won't be a problem.
Yeah. On the Vegas, so we touched on it before. 4 games is too much, and it looks like they're going to drop the women's match. Unfortunately for the women's, I watched the match. I watched the whole match. Me and my wife watched it. It was depressing. Nope, shut up, Bixby. It was depressing. They stayed ahead of the Jillaroos stayed ahead of the timer the entire match, you know, with their score. It ended up being 90-4.
90-4 was the final score.
They didn't even kick many conversions as well.
Yeah.
I was, like, messaging Mitchell Pearce as well. I was like, how good did the women look? Like, slick with the passing. Everything was sticking really well. But, yeah, like, their conversions leave a lot to be desired, actually.
Yeah, well, they scored 17 tries, and you mentioned it, 11 from 17, so they missed 6 goals. Yeah. If they kicked the 6 goals, it would have been 102-4. So, yeah I mean, look, my thoughts on it are that that's just too big a gap in standard between the two teams, and that's the problem. You're trying to sell the game to a new audience here, and that's... you know, I'd be saying the same if it was a men's game where the scoreline was that. If Penrith had beaten Cronulla 90-4, I would have been saying Cronulla shouldn't have been there. Yeah. In the same way that the Jillaroos beating England 90-4, well, England shouldn't have been there. I'm not sure what they do. Maybe they need to look at, creating a rest of the world team, but that might not address it. Maybe playing women's origin instead of...
Well, so... We touched on it last week and the difference between the NRLW and the AFLW. And, you know, I saw a score for the AFLW or a women's match in the AFL that was 109-1 in last week, one of the last week's games. So all the teams scored in the AFL was 1 behind.
Yeah.
And the other team scored like more than 100.
In the AFLW. Yeah, that's very common in the AFLW. Yeah. Teams go whole games without kicking a goal and sort of thing.
The English coach, I don't know who he was, but he pointed out he picked no people from the NRLW. He picked none of the girls that qualified from the NRLW, and that that really highlights the issue in the women's game right now, which was an issue previously and still a little bit, but not so much previously in Australia, like in the men's internationals, right? There used to just be like Australia, New Zealand, and Great Britain, and then Great Britain split into all of the different England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales to widen the game. And now there's really like a massive gap between Australia, New Zealand, and the rest of the world. So if you put Australia versus, Greece on in the men's game in that game, it would have been like 102-4 because their conversions would have stuck.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like, if the International Rugby League and the NRL want to make the women's game an international game, the only way to do that is to prop up competitions in other countries. Because if the English coach had used all of the women that qualified, it would have just been an NRLW game, and they could have just done that. They could have just done the Broncos versus the Dragons or something in NRLW just as an exhibition match,
Yeah.
Like, there's no point in doing an international. And, man, the Jillaroos look good, man. Like,
yeah, it's not their fault.
Yeah, like
it's their opposition.
They look like a legitimate...
Yeah, you can't blame the team that put 90 points on you. The issue is the opposition.
Yeah, they're not an NRL quality team because they are young, like not younger in like age, but the competition is younger. It doesn't have the pool of players to pull from because it's women over men, But they are like I like to say, they're like a Jersey Flegg quality team, And I'm sure if you played Jersey Flegg against any NRLW women team, which you wouldn't because you don't want men tackling women, the Jersey Flegg team will win.
Yeah, like it's just different.
The quality of game, they hit hard. Like I said, their passing was slick and it stuck. Tamika Upton was phenomenal. I think she ran for like 172 metres, scored 3 tries. Kezzy Epps was like and they're all so fast. That was the thing. Like all of the Jillaroos were so much faster than England, the English players. Your prop is slow and your fullback is fast. The Australian props were moving faster than the English fullback. And I was telling my wife at the time, the big issue was, like, it showed like a lack of knowledge and understanding of the game overall. I'm sure whoever the English coach is understands, but it's just a quality of competition because there were points where they were staying back in defence and just shifting with the ball and not closing the line. So they were letting the Jillaroos come to them when there were points they should have been rushing up. And so by I remember it very clearly. There was 22 minutes to go in the second half. The Jillaroos were throwing like 20, 26, 30-metre passes across field because they knew they had no risk of being intercepted. When would you ever see an NRL men's team, let alone an Australian team, throw 2 passes to get from one end of the field to the other?
Yeah.
They'd never do it because the defence... the opposing defence would be rushing up in unison and there'd be an intercept and a runaway try. But that was the thing. Like the English defence just didn't have the understanding and ability and speed of the line to shut down that kind of... Some of the plays were nonsense. And it was like the Jillaroos knew they were so much... Obviously, they were up by 70 points at that stage or something.
Yeah.
So much further ahead of the opposition that they could do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not... I can understand why they're going to axe the game. If they want to bring international women's football to the world, the NRL and the international football needs to go on... The NRL is doing it right with the NRLW. You can see.
Yeah, with the gradual expansion, not just throwing all the teams in at once like the AFL.
They need to go to the other countries and say, this is how we are doing it, and you've got to do the same thing. I saw a video today... about the Cronulla Sharks women's team. They have like terrible facilities. It's really terrible. They've got an under 16. What did they say? Under 16s, under 19s, and first grade team, right? And they have like there's facilities that wherever they train and play are terrible. Where like they put the food in the bathroom for game days.
Oh, jeez.
But the government is pledging $4 million, and I think it was the Sharks are pledging $4 million to upgrade the facilities. That's the thing, right? The Cronulla Sharks women's team is a professional team, so they need professional facilities, and they're putting money into improving those facilities. Improving facilities is one of the steps to heightening the quality of the game. If the players are treated better, they will be able to perform better. And I think one of the mentions in the commentary was only 2 years ago the Jillaroos had to pay their own tickets to go to the games like this, you know.
Oh.
It was only 2 years ago. And I think if you remember last year during the Women's Rugby Union World Cup, the Australian Rugby Union team, or whatever it was, some international competition, the Australian Female Rugby Union team got stuck in Canada and they all had to find their own way home.
Oh, right.
You know, we discussed it like in passing last year on the podcast. So, you know, that kind of investment in money is what has not just the fact that the women are able to, you know, compete better, but it's that investment of money that has helped the AFLW, NRLW grow to the level it is, that they're so far in front of every other country in the world. And it's too far. You know, because they don't have to buy their own things. They don't have to work now. They have a full-time job as a rugby league player, so they can train. They can train with the men. You know, they can. They obviously they're not going to scrimmage with the men. Like no matter what anyone wants to think about equality and everything, they're not going to scrimmage with the men. The men will smash them. Right?
That's
just... Benji Marshall would put 6 tries on them, but he did that to the Tigers too. So the Tigers is the level of an NRL to my W team. But you know, they get the access to all of the sports science coaching upgrades and stuff that the men do, and that puts them at how they are. 90-4.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. And look, I didn't watch the game, but you know, I mean, 90-4. That tells you the story, right?
Yeah.
You know how
it was ridiculous.
17 tries. I mean, I can work out what happened.
6 missed.
Yeah. It could have been. Well, if all the goals were kicked, it would have been 102-4. Look, what I would just say about it is, like, what they got to do, the NRL, is they've got to ask themselves, look, what's the objective with these Las Vegas games? Because a 90-4 result is not selling the game to Americans. That's too lopsided a game. So they've got to ask themselves, what's our objective here? Are they just putting these games on in Vegas because it's a really cool thing to have rugby league on in America, or are they actually trying to provide the best possible selling points for the game in America?
Like a lot of people are like, oh, of course they picked the women to get cut, but when you get right down to it, the Wigan-Warrington game was a bit of a blowout, but at least who lost? I can't even remember. Couldn't tell the difference between the teams. Wigan beat Warrington, right?
It was 48-24 the score.
Yeah, but at least the losing team scored 24 points.
Yeah,
right? And there was some remarkable tries and stuff.
There's a bit of a difference between 48-24 and 90-4.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a bit of a difference.
The Warriors...
Yeah, Wigan won 48-24 over Warrington.
So the Warriors put on the worst performance of the men's team, but it still had big hits, line breaks, flashy plays, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, the women's game was just it ended up being pointless.
And my other issue is it wasn't just about the women's game either. What you got to think is you got 4 games that you're hoping that Americans will tune in and watch, and what you got to think is, well, there's a bit of a problem when you're watching a game that's 90-4. A lot of Americans would have watched that and gone, oh, I'm not watching this anymore, and then you got the main event on afterwards, the Panthers Sharks on afterwards, and a lot of Americans who watched that women's game would have gone, oh, look, that's enough for me, and they would have missed out on the main event because of that.
Yeah, people left. You know, they went from... They had over 50,000 people at the stadium, and it went down to like 46,000 or 44,000 was the estimate. So like 10% of the people left.
Yeah. And that's not good.
Yeah, you don't know who they were. Like, the British crowd was mad vocal during the Super League game. There was a lot of Warriors fans. Like, seriously, you go watch that Warriors game and check the crowd, and like 70% of it is Warriors fans. So I guess there's a huge New Zealand contingent living in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like, you know, it was hard. It was hard to watch. It would be hard, I imagine, for anyone to keep watching after that Jillaroos game. And it's not sexist or misogynist, or of course they picked the women. No. It's just, unfortunately, women's international rugby league is not up to the standard. And if it had been a cracker of a game, it might have encouraged people to stay and watch the next one. You know, if it had been a close, awesome women's game. And there are some awesome women's games in the NRLW. But unfortunately it wasn't, and it kind of ruined the spectacle a little bit.
And that's the thing, like, let's say if the Australian men's team, the Kangaroos, let's say they played against the United States, right? Yeah. The scoreline would have been similar, and we would have been saying the same thing.
Exactly.
We would have said, If the scoreline had been 90-4 in that game, we would have been saying, well, this isn't the best selling point for the game.
And you got to think, if it was, like I said, if it was the men, they would have kicked the conversions. They would have had like...
It would have been 102-4.
Yeah, who's the best kicker in the league, currently? He would have been playing for the the Kangaroos, right? So
Yeah, that's right.
Who's the current Kangaroos kicker? I don't know, but like... It would have been someone.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head who kicked goals for.
Even probably the 10th best kicker in the league would have kicked most of the goals, So
I'll look it up who kicked goals for the Kangaroos in the Pacific Championship.
Yeah.
Let's have a look here. It was actually your man Zach Lomax.
Yeah, well, he's one of the top kickers in the league, right?
Yeah.
So imagine him kicking. That's the thing, right? And then finally with Vegas, the world's dumbest thing in the entire world. Channel 9 didn't send anyone to Vegas.
I think they had a few, but they called the game from Sydney. They had a few reporters there. Well, they had Jannik and Mason, I think, was there. Paul Gallen and Jonathan.
The sideline.
Yeah, they were there, but they did call the game from Sydney. Matt Thompson and Andrew Johns called it from a studio in Sydney. And viewers noted that the problem with that was... the problem with that is that if you've got a couple of commentators in Sydney calling it on the TV, they're not really sort of getting the hype of the occasion. They're just calling it like it's a normal game because they don't have the feel of the occasion being there in Las Vegas that the Fox commentators would have had. All the Fox commentators were there in Vegas and they were all very enthusiastic and everything. Whereas people were saying that, Andrew Johns was just calling the game like it was just a regular game.
You got to think of when you have Andrew Johns, right? I've talked about it before. You don't really see a lot of off-the-ball play, but the one off-the-ball play where it was important to watch everybody on the field was during a Dragons game where I saw Mark Gasnier trotting into open space on a scrum play, and I was like, what's Gasnier doing there? And then the Dragons dummied one way and let the other, and Gasnier scored a try, right? Andrew Johns would have noticed that and been able to give a expert takedown on how they've sold it and stuff like that. But if they're calling it from Sydney, they're watching the monitor, they're seeing what we see, and rugby league is, of course, better on television because you want to follow the ball most of the time. But, he's not going to be able to see things like, a player down in back play, somebody limping, lots of different things. It's a bunch of stuff that he can't see and has no control over. He wouldn't be able to see, who's one of the fullbacks? Dylan Edwards has dropped back early on this, or, you can see Dylan Edwards sniffing around because he knows Nathan Cleary's going to do a chip and chase or something. You can't see that because you're totally relying on what the cameras are going to give you.
Yeah.
So it's never a good idea to have commentators call a game through a monitor.
That's true. That having been said, at least he still says things like, Nicho Hynes was out of position in defence there. So I will defend Andrew Johns on that point in that the Fox commentary, it was all flowery and everything's great and everyone's great and the whole world's great and we're standing around singing songs under a rainbow, Whereas at least Andrew Johns actually goes, Nicho Hynes was out of position on that try, I'm going to call him out, even though he's calling it off the TV back in Sydney. So I will defend him on that. I'd still rather listen to that commentary than listen to Fox just say how great everything is.
And that's the thing, right? But if he hadn't been able to see Nicho Hynes on the monitor, he wouldn't have been able to know that Nicho Hynes was out.
That's the thing, and that's the thing. He's commentating like that from a TV in Sydney. Imagine how much better his commentary would be if he was actually there.
Even things like, in stuff like that, the things you'll see, especially, it comes more into it in defence, right? So it might have been like the fullback was way over the other side of the field, and that is what led in the try. But if they're watching a monitor in Sydney, he wouldn't be able to know that because the monitor wouldn't be paying attention to the fullback. Yeah. So stuff like that they'll miss out on. I think it's a big mistake not to send. In the UFC, the commentators watch a monitor most of the time because they need to. Because fighters are facing away from them, or they're on the ground and doing rear naked choke away from them, or the referee's standing in the way. Right? But they're there in the thing listening to the crowd and all that kind of stuff. In rugby league, it's really important for the commentators to be there, because they need to be able to see everything. They need to be able to see the field. So it's
and look, and you can put viewers off by like if viewers know that you're calling it from a studio when it's over in Las Vegas. Well, you put them off. They start to there becomes a lack of trust between the viewers and the TV station, and you know that's not great over the long term for the reputation of the TV station.
Now on to other NRL news. Gorden Tallis has already set up the season of war with Michael Maguire.
Yeah.
Everybody's waiting for Gorden Tallis to be proven wrong and then see what he does.
It didn't take long, did it? We were talking about for a lot of the off-season, how long is it going to take for Gorden Tallis to have a dig at Michael Maguire? Well, it's happened in the first week of NRL 360 being back on. These are the quotes from Gorden Tallis. He says, this will make you laugh, he says, if Kevy Walters was still coaching, they'd be close to favourites this year. This is what Gorden Tallis says.
There's proof of that's not true. When they were like new favourites for the wooden spoon, and Michael Maguire signed and they suddenly became fourth favourites. Yeah. If only there was a numerical way that we could calculate that. Yeah. Like there is.
Yeah. Let's not forget they missed the finals under Kevin Walters last year, and Kevin Walters only made the finals once in 4 seasons at the Broncos. So let's remember that. But anyway, he goes on, Gorden Tallis. He says, Broncos, I think they're going to hit the ground running. Ben Hunt, a bit more experience in the halves. The young players, a year older, and Payne Haas and Pat Carrigan. Look at their roster. I thought last year they were criticised and it was a bit unwarranted. I thought the injuries coming off the grand final, they didn't handle all that. How many players do with such a massive disappointment? But if you look at their roster and you go, can that side win a competition? I go, yes. I think the Broncos are going to have a great year. So we know what he's doing. He's saying the Broncos can win the comp because if they don't do that, he can have a go at Michael Maguire. He's setting the bar right up there for the Broncos so that he knows if they don't meet that expectation, he can have a dig at Michael Maguire straight away. That's the plan from Gorden Tallis. We can all see it from a mile away.
Yeah, exactly. And, unfortunately for Gorden Tallis, there is a numerical value that is assigned to... a numerical and measurable value that is assigned to favourites for the competition. And when Kevin Walters was there, they were like favourites for the wooden spoon. Michael Maguire came in and they went to fourth favourite overnight.
Yeah, even third favourite.
So it was a third favourite, yeah. So, you can't say things like that. And then, they're not going to win the comp. I mean, they're not the most likely to win the comp over Melbourne or even the Panthers.
And so he's come out and said they can win the comp because he knows it's not going to happen, so he can have a go at Michael Maguire.
Bro, the Tigers can win the comp. I can say it. It doesn't make it true. Yeah. And if Michael Maguire, I guarantee you, Michael Maguire. I can't guarantee it, but my prediction is that Michael Maguire will get Most Improved Coach award this year, because the Broncos are going to go from erratic and unable to perform to, like I've been saying, they're going to struggle the first half of the year, and I did leave him out of my 8. I think they're going to struggle the first half of the year. Then Ezra Mam's going to come back and everything's going to click and they're going to go on a tear. Their problem will be that they'll also have a lot of players picked for Origin.
Yeah. Let's remember, as I said, 1 finals appearance in 4 seasons. That's not a great record for Kevin Walters given the roster that he had there. Let's remember they made the grand final in 2023. They did. But then they finished 12th last year. That's a terrible backing up from making the grand final in 2023. So it's clear to me the plan from Gorden Tallis. Say they can win the comp so that when they don't, he can have a big go at Michael Maguire. Because he knows that, there'll be times during the year where the Broncos stumble. They'll go through lean patches. Of course they will. Every team does. And he's just going to hammer Michael Maguire at every possible opportunity.
Yeah, it'll be Michael Maguire's fault.
Michael Maguire will have to win every game this year to keep Gorden Tallis happy.
Well, Gorden Tallis at the end of the season, if Michael Maguire won every game, would say, and that's the team that Kevy Walters built. Yeah. All he's done is come in and taken over Kevy's team.
But it's clearly it's premeditated from Gorden Tallis. I'm going to talk them up as much as I can so that when they don't meet the expectations, I'll just sink the boot into Maguire.
So there's some terrible happenings in Queensland right now with a massive cyclone that's landing today. Is that landing today? Was that?
Let's have a look. Brisbane is bracing for a rare weather event this week as Tropical Cyclone Alfred approaches the southeast Queensland coast, threatening to disrupt both NRL and AFL fixtures in Brisbane. For the NRL, it's the game between the Dolphins and South Sydney. The Rabbitohs are due to face the Dolphins at Suncorp Stadium on Friday, but doubts have surfaced because of the possibility of severe weather. Club officials plan to fly to Queensland on Thursday, though the schedule may change amid uncertainty over the cyclone's landfall. So it's uncertain when it's going to make landfall.
I'm just checking. I've watched that movie Twisters, so I'm an expert on this stuff, right? I'm not reading this now. Every 6 hours, they have to update the map, because they're so unpredictable. They don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They've been tracking it for the past 11 days, and so they issue a new map every 6 hours to let you know where it's going. And it's looking like where it's going to hit exactly where you just said. It's going to be a massive intensity when it hits, and now my computer's frozen.
It's all right, I've got the line here. So Bureau of Meteorology reports indicate Tropical Cyclone Alfred could make landfall as early as Thursday, packing winds of up to 95 kilometres per hour, with gusts reaching 130 kilometres per hour. So there you go.
And there's this is the thing that I was always trying to get to. It's the severity is all about whether it lands during high tide. It's that's why they update it every 6 hours, because they don't know. And then if it's going to be landing during high tide, it's really, really bad, because obviously the water will be in and cause massive floods. Yeah. Some of the rugby league players that are living up there have had to sandbag their houses and stuff like that. Hope everything works out. Feel bad for Queensland. It just seems like every single couple of years they go through these massive weather issues. As much as I hate Queenslanders, I don't wish that kind of terrible.
Yeah, no, of course not. We don't wish that upon anybody.
And it's you got to fully applaud them if they do suspend the game, because look, the UFC ran one of their events while those California wildfires were raging, and there was a basketball game the night before and all this kind of stuff. But they were in completely different suburbs. Some people criticised them. They were far away from the fires. That was the thing. They did the whole assessment. Oh, sweet, we'll be fine. Basketball played there. They had no issue. We can run the UFC event. This is actually going to be a cyclone that lands on Suncorp Stadium. We don't want the players out there playing. And we just have to suspend it and play a different day.
That's the thing. It's not worth it for the sake of one football game. Exactly. It's just not worth the risk. It's a football game. It's not worth risking the health and safety of players, spectators, everybody involved. South's forward Jillaroos made it clear he's unwilling to land in Queensland if the cyclone's timing endangers the team's fight, declaring, and I quote, "There's no chance I'll fly into the cyclone," and you can't blame him.
No way, not at all. Yeah. Because it's not just even during the game, as Jairo points out. It's all about arriving there, staying there, they arrive a few days before being in the place and everything. So we have to see what happens. It'll screw up everyone's tipping comps. I don't know what will happen with that, but I'm sure that'll sort itself out one way or another. I talk to developers all the time, and I say, dude, they release the draw in November, and it never changes unless there's a COVID. That happens once every million years. Don't worry about it. Nothing bad will ever happen. Cyclone. Damn it. And now over to the Roosters.
Yes.
Nick Politis and every single Roosters fan is incredibly concerned about the season ahead for the Roosters.
Yes.
I read a thing yesterday where it's more than half of their 2024 first grade squad is out for the round one. So, obviously with retirements and changing of clubs and stuff, but more than half of their 2024 first choice squad is not there. Yeah, look,
I can run through it again. Their departures, we've done it a few times. I'll just do it quickly again. So Joseph Suoliti and Joey Manu have gone to Rugby Union. Jared Warrior-Hargreaves has gone to Hull KR. Luke Keary's gone to Catalans. Satili Tupanua's gone to the Bulldogs. Terrell May's gone to the Tigers. Michael Jennings has retired. So in total, they've lost 1,250 games of experience. Their only gain is Chad Townsend in the halves. So
who wasn't meant to play and he's now going to have to play because Sam Walker is out.
Well, this is it. Hopefully they get Sam Walker back. I guess, well, later on in the season. That's what they're looking at here. You'd have to think that the heat's going to come on Trent Robinson if they go poorly. Let's remember that they've only won 2 from their last 22 against the Panthers and the Storm, the 2 best teams in the comp.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pain, but my conspiracy theory is they plan to sign someone in the middle of the year.
Oh yeah, probably.
They're gonna sign someone for 2026, and then they're gonna convince them to come early, and the club's gonna release them. They're gonna do a couple of signings like that, put their team back together, and then go on a run for the finals and scrape into the 8. And that'll be fine. That'll be like we had to go through a rebuilding phase, dude. We lost 1,250 games worth of.
That's right.
And then 2026 will be the main year.
Well, that's right. I mean, they're not a club who are just happy to go, oh, yeah, we'll come 14th this year and that'll be okay. Like, they're not a club to just lie down like that. They won't do that. They're hoping Sam Walker will return midway through the season from an ACL injury. They've still got a lot of young players under the age of 25. Siua Wong, Spencer Leniu, Egan Butcher, Sandon Smith, all under 25 here. So I guess they are in a rebuilding phase here.
Absolutely. And then Andrew Abdo was on a podcast the other day and announced, it was Andrew Abdo, right?
Yeah.
Announced that a new Rugby League video game is coming. Rugby League Live 5.
That's right.
Once again made by Big Ant, who took over for Rugby League Live. It was Rugby League 3 was on Wii, and then Rugby League Live was after that. So they've done the last 5 games. I'm not that excited, to be honest. I really loved the Rugby League video games, but what I really loved was franchising. Building your team, playing it. I used to, my mate Ben, he would come over and stay up all night and we'd franchise our team and train it and trade players in and out and stuff like that. Make our own player and buy ourselves as rookies. And in one of them, see, I've just gone on this down slide. Rugby League on Wii was pretty good. I actually made a save game for everybody in the world, like multiple years in a row, that people would download. Which was, I would flash the game to 0 and then do all the trades, set up all the teams and publish it on the internet, and people would download that save game and then they'd be able to play the next year's league with all the right things. My biggest issue with it was people would adjust all the stats. I hate it when users adjust stats. Like, it's so stupid. And then when Rugby League Live came out from Big Ant, it was garbage. It really was. It was so stupid. And then I think the third one, or the second one, when you played multiplayer, your indicators were the same colour. So you couldn't tell who was who. And then the last time we played, like, I actually bought it. My mate Ben came up from Melbourne to play. Like, he was coming up anyway, but I was like, oh, you're coming up at the same time as Rugby League's coming out. And then we found out you couldn't play multiplayer with a franchise. So
right, okay.
We were like, well, and that, like, I paid for it and then never played it because of that. So, like, the way I figure it with video games is they should never remove a function. They should always add more and make it cleaner and slicker. By reports, Rugby League Live 4 was the best game ever. I liked Rugby League 2 on Xbox Original.
Yeah, right.
Like, that was my favourite.
I remember, I think it was I think it might have been the first one of these Rugby League Live ones, the one in 2003. I think it was on PlayStation 2. I think 1 or 2, maybe. It's a long time ago. It's hard to remember.
2.
I think it might have been PlayStation 2. And I remember they seemed to have, like, their big thing in that game was, like, it was forward passes. I remember you'd throw a pass that'd go 5 metres forward and you'd get away with it. And then these other forward passes would go like 10 metres forward, and then you get pinged for a deliberate forward pass, and it was like, how often does that happen in the game? Like, teams never get a penalty for a deliberate forward pass anymore. There seemed to be this over-emphasis on forward passes and deliberate forward passes in that 2003 version. That was my main experience with it, but I thought you might find this one interesting.
I'll probably still buy it,
put it down.
but probably a wait. And the other thing is, with these small Australian... Big Ant is maybe She Interactive is still around, but across Australia and New Zealand, there's not very many game studios. And the problem with video games is the way it works. They get the investment and they have to sell a certain amount at full price before they make their money back, right? Obviously. And even though, you know, Rugby League doesn't have as big a budget as like an EA Sports game, they still have to sell like quite a lot, like 1 million copies or something at full price to get their money back. And they never end up selling the amount. So, you know, 5 years later, 3 years later, the game is still $90. You know, you never get the like $40 discount or anything like that. So it's hard to ask people to invest in a game like a rugby league game, and it's not the fault of the developers, or it's really the fault of the industry as a whole. But it's hard to ask people to invest like $80-90 in a game when a AAA rated title like whatever is coming out, like the latest Assassin's Creed will come out soon. Right, it's a AAA rated title. It'll come out. It'll be $100, and there'll be all these editions that you can buy with Assassin's Creed figurines for $150 and stuff. Maybe 3-4 months down the track, they will have made their money back, and then they'll be able to reduce it to like $80. And then 3 or 4 months after that, there'll be a sale on the digital copy that it's like $40, and you'll be able to buy pre-owned copies. Unfortunately for Rugby League Live, it never gets to that point, so it's always just $90. $90 forever. So it is hard to ask people to invest even like 2-3 years down the track. They'll still have to buy it brand new for $90. Yeah, so I'll wait and see if it comes out. If you can do a multiplayer franchise mode, I'll be in it. Ben, coming up from Melbourne, let's get on the multiplayer franchise mode. Play on the big 75-inch TV.
Yeah, that'll be alright.
Yeah,
I think the experience will be a lot better in 2025 than it was in 2003. That's
2003 was that Rugby League 2 actually.
Was it? Yeah, so that on the PlayStation 2, was it? Yeah, that
was the best one, man.
I don't know, it was fun to play that one, and it was... I know they had that forward pass issue, but apart from that, it was really fun, and the gameplay was really easy, I found, with that game as well.
That was developed by She, S-I-D-H-E, She Interactive,
That's right.
Which is a New Zealand company. The CEO, Mario, I used to argue with him on his forums all the time.
Right.
And that was their last one. Oh, no, they did the Wii one after that, Rugby League 3, and the Wii one was their last one. And then it got taken over by Big Ant.
And theirs hasn't been as good.
Apparently Rugby League 4, Rugby League, that's when it became Rugby League Live. Rugby League Live 4 was really good. It was given like 8 out of 10. Well, it's got like 8 out of 10 or 80% or whatever on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. But I think that was the one, it was like 2020. That was the one where you couldn't play multiplayer franchise. Like they had taken it out. Even though the previous games were not very good, they'd taken it out. And I just couldn't see any logical reason why they took that out. Like, I'm going to do a franchise. I'm going to, build my player, put my player in as the rookie, buy him, manage the training of my team, manage my salary cap, buy players, look for stuff. That's like, I remember me and Ben, we were playing with the Roosters, and I was the 5'8", I think. He was the hooker, and Andrew Johns was our halfback. We bought him. We're like, and we had
not a bad buy, that one.
We had to buy a bunch of rookies to accommodate for the salary cap, and then you build like in the end we actually had to, in one of the times we played it, we had to let me go because I was too expensive. Like we couldn't actually retain me; it was impossible because I was like I was the 5'8", and I kept scoring all the tries.
Yeah,
and so it was like awesome, like really fun to do that kind of stuff. Of course, Rugby League 2, that game, it didn't have the best franchise management system. So actually what would tend to happen is after like 8-9 years of playing, like in the franchise, there would always be not enough players to buy a full team. And we'd have to forfeit multiple times.
Yeah, I'm just sort of remembering that 2003 game. I think like players like Andrew Johns and Jonathan Thurston, and I think Matt Bowen as well from memory. They had these like really I think they had these like ratings like out of 10, and they were all like 10 out of 10, and they were so fast and you couldn't tackle them, and like Matt Bowen and Jonathan Thurston would just run through the whole team.
That's what I didn't like people adjusting. That's the stuff because on the Rugby League 3 on Wii, you could adjust that stuff. So then I would find people had downloaded my save game where I'd sat down and done all the bloody player transfers to set it up to today's current thing. And then they adjusted Greg Inglis to 10. And it was just dumb. Like, honestly, like...
Because that's the thing, like, of course Andrew Johns was a great player, but he wasn't 10 out of 10 in terms of speed. Like, he wasn't as fast as a Matt Bowen, you know?
Yeah, like, that's because... When individuals do that, they don't have a spreadsheet or anything of every player in front of them because it's a sliding scale, right?
Yeah.
Andrew Johns isn't the fastest. He's not faster than Matt Bowen.
Yeah.
But his passing is better than Matt Bowen.
Yeah.
But then you have to take into account new guy, rookie or whatever. I don't even know who a rookie was back then. But he can't have, he's not a 1 compared to 10 type thing. So there's a curve you have to do it all on. And instead what they would do is they would just put Greg Inglis as 10 of everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you just put Greg Inglis on your team and you run up the field and no one can tackle you. And then rugby, one of them that was online, I tried to play online. I was pretty good at, I think it was Rugby League Live 3. I was pretty good at it, but there was an exploit where you could kick off and recover the ball straight away. And so that's what it was. People would just kick off and recover the ball straight away. And also, because the games were so short, it became a smarter thing to kick field goals. So you would play online and then kick off and recover the ball straight away, hit the ball up twice and then kick a field goal from 30 out. It was really easy to do. And then you'd have to kick off again and they'd get the ball back.
Yeah.
And then that person would kick off and recover the ball, hit the ball up twice and kick a field goal. So it was a bit dumb.
I guess maybe you know a lot more about gaming than me, but maybe in 2025 you could do stuff like that, like have, if Andrew Johns were playing now, you could have all the specifics, like 10 out of 10 for passing, but not 10 out of 10 for speed, compared with someone like Matt Bowen if he was playing
That's
now.
the cool thing about MMA games and stuff like that, right? Like they can put in Fedor Emelianenko, who retired in, I don't even know, like 2002, and you can fight John Jones. And that's really cool. So you sort of dropped Andrew Johns into the current game. And the beautiful thing about current games currently is stuff like that exploit with the kick-off and recover. They are more likely to release patches to close that issue. So you can't do that. So I'll see what happens. I might buy it. I got all the PlayStations and stuff. Well, Alex does, but I can just steal it and put it on my TV. And I say, shut up, go play your Switch. That's it for NRL.
Yeah.
Let's see. We might do, when it comes out, maybe I'll do a review. It'll be a tax write-off purchasing it.
Yeah, we should do that once it comes out. We should do that.
Just get it and play it.
Yeah, maybe I'll do the same and we can talk about it on here.
But just lastly, in tennis, Druggy Sinner.
Yeah.
He's no longer eligible for his Laureus award.
Yeah, Jannik Sinner's nomination for the Laureus World Sportsman of the Year has been withdrawn after he was given a 3-month doping ban. Look, you can't blame Laureus. I would have done the same thing if I was running Laureus. You can't have someone who tests positive, registers 2 positive doping tests and receives a 3-month ban, getting an award like this. And people who say, like Feliciano Lopez, we talked about last week, said, oh, he's innocent. No, he's not innocent. No. He's serving a 3-month ban, which he agreed to. So he's acknowledging that he's not innocent. If he was innocent, he wouldn't have agreed to any ban. So sorry, Feliciano. I think Laureus are right to withdraw this nomination.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's always going to have that star next week.
Yeah, and we all remember it's a nice, convenient ban that sees him return for the Italian Open and the French Open.
Oh, surprisingly.
Yeah.
That's it for the week. Don't forget to sign up to go to optimumcbd.store for all of your CBD needs. You must be over 18 to order.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Australia are in the semi-finals of the Champions Trophy as well.
They are too, yeah.
But that's on tonight, so we can't really say a whole lot about that. But yeah, just letting you know, India and Australia are in the semis of the Champions Trophy. South Africa are playing New Zealand in that other semi, so we'll be able to talk about that next week. That'll be wrapped up that tournament will be wrapped up by the time
Make sure you jump
week.
in and play the Smart Play. It is up, so you can build your team and try and win some free Smart coins. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the NRL live for Sundays, but it will be available on Thursday. Had a bit of an issue with the data. You can actually see the issue with the data right now if you go to the SmartB website and try and check on last year's, 2023's ladder where it says Newcastle Knights came first.
Oh, wow.
Data discrepancies, you got to do a lot of data matching and stuff like that. And there's a lot of data to import for NRL. So, yeah, we'll be live on Thursday. And make sure it's not too late to sign up for the tipping comp. You can win $100 every week for being the best tipper and $10,000 at the end of the year. You've only missed 2 games, so make sure you sign up. Log on and sign up to this tipping comp. And the AFL one starts on Thursday. As I said, 22% of people tipped the Raiders. I did not. So that means someone's most likely going to win $100 next week. Unless I can make it up on the other games.
It's only 2 games. You've got another 6 to go. So.
Hopefully I can.
And Doggies Dragons on Saturday. Our 2
you haven't gone to that?
Yeah, nice. Our 2 teams going head to head. So one of us will have bragging rights when we're on next week.
25% of people believe the Dragons can win it. I have not tipped the Dragons.
Well, the problem with that is now there's expectations on the. See, it's changed, hasn't it? They made the finals last year. Now there's expectations. They're favourites to win this game.
The Dragons are also favourites for the Spoon. Don't forget that.
Oh, okay. Are they really?
Bookie's favourite still for the Spoon, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. All right, see everybody next week. Enjoy the football on the weekend. If you're into AFL, enjoy AFL's opening round, whatever the crap it's called.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you just call it round 1?
It's bizarre. And see you next week, Dan. Buy producer chairs. Both chairs are back now.
Thanks, John. See you next week.